What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Jonas, and with me, as always, is the incomparable Mr. David Fuchs. What's going on, David?
Nothing much. I just love these like adjectives that you make for me that just come out of
It just
nowhere.
comes like I look at your face and I'm inspired, and I say, "This guy is incomparable." What other thing do you want me to say?
It's funny. I always it's always a nice little surprise, like what verb or what adjective is gonna come out of your mouth. But I'll take that. I'll take that.
So let's talk about one of the things that I love this topic. This is something we probably introduced 3 or 4 cycles ago talking about.
Well, you created this topic.
Well,
You created like the concept pretty much.
yeah. So let me give everybody a little context to this. And this really came more so from studying for CFA than for studying for CFP, because when I studied for CFP, it was so niche that I actually didn't know anybody else studying for the exam, other than the people who were in my review course. But I was the only one from my office. I was the only one that I knew from even the surrounding offices, because we would get together for meetings with surrounding Smith Barney offices. Not one single person looked familiar. They were all from different places, UBS's, Merrill's, all those types. And so I studied primarily for that exam alone. When I studied for CFA level one, I also primarily studied for that alone. Level two was such a step up in material, and intensity, that like about a quarter of the way through, I thought to myself, like, there's no way I can do this alone. So I found a partner to study with, and we studied pretty much 6 to 7 days a week together. And it completely changed the entire way that I studied. And it actually shortened down the amount that I actually would have studied versus studying on my own.
Yeah.
And just that interaction alone is probably the reason that I passed level two, because I passed level one with absolute flying colors. I did not pass level two with flying colors. That one was way more. I'm like, oh God, like, it was a quick study. I took the exam early December. I started studying right after Labor Day. It was a lot of readings. It was a lot to get through. And I knew that I could be just above the line or just below the line based on that study time. I should have given myself more time. And going in and studying with a partner just completely changed that for me, because the one thing, and it's hard to boil it down to one thing, but I'll boil it down. Talking things out loud completely changed everything for me.
Oh yeah. And you actually made a really good point earlier about how you're like we ended up studying a lot together, me and my partner, but I actually ended up, I think, aggregating it. If you aggregated it, I actually studied probably less than what I
Yes,
studied on my own. And I think
correct.
that's a great point because a lot of these times when we're talking, and a lot of them come from, your process and your philosophy, when we talk about some of these little tips that we give people, when it comes to studying with a partner or anything that we talk about, it's actually meant to make your time more efficient. So I thought, so I'm happy that you made sure to point that out, that, this was so effective that I passed. And oh, by the way, I actually studied less time and this is not an endorsement to study less,
Right.
but it's an endorsement.
Yeah.
It's an endorsement like for the strategy. Like, listen, bouncing ideas off people, being relying on other people, being accountable is more efficient, not only from you learning the material and passing the exam, but it's also like, by the way, like you don't have to waste as much time as you think you do.
Right. And just to make that concrete, what I would normally get done in, like, let's say I was like, okay, Saturday, I'm going to study all day. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to go to the gym in the morning. I'm going to run my errands, and then I'm going to sit down. I'm going to start studying by 11 o'clock, and I'm going to study from 11 to 7. I'm going to take a break in the middle. I'm going to do 2 3 hour sessions and then I'm going to take a break. What we got done in 4 hours is what I would have gotten done on my own at 8. And
Right.
just to make that more concrete, I took less breaks. I was far more focused, having somebody there to talk through the material with. But even more importantly, there were just things that I understood and was way better at than he was. And I would teach that to him. And there were things that he was way better at and he would teach it and then the best part about it was like I would say something and then he'd poke a hole in it and I'd be like, "You bastard." But I didn't even think about it that way. But I would be like, and I would get like, "Oh damn, I didn't even think about it." Like, and then I would say something and I'd be like, "I think it's like this." And he'd be like, "Well, what about that then? What about that example we saw 4 pages ago?" And I'd be like, "Oh damn." And that spent not only like it made me think about things deeper, it made me actually like stop and think. Where it's very easy when you're studying and there's a lot of material, you want to zoom right through it. Like I
Hmm.
just want to get through the material, and taking that extra moment to stop, to think, to materialize that content, put it into a context, it became far more memorable. And it felt like when we actually saw a question, we could recall that conversation.
Yeah. And there's also the point to be made that what you don't know, they may know, and what they don't know, you may know. And I always and that helps itself because you have someone there that's going to be able to articulate. So there's a couple different points here. Number one, if if you don't know it and they know it, they're going to be able to teach it to you, and you have someone that instead of just trying to read it and teach yourself via the textbook and rereading that same page over and over and over again, you have someone there that's going to personally be able to actually teach it to you. Switch the roles. That's number one. Number two, switch those roles. If you're able to then turn around and teach it to them, I always say if you could teach a concept to someone else and have them learn it, that is that shows exemplifies expertise on that topic.
It's the highest form of mastery.
It's the highest form of mastery if you could teach that topic to someone else. And then the third thing is just going back to time, it does help um shorten the amount of time that you need because now you're going to learn it from somebody, you're collaborating with a partner as opposed to again you trying to go teach yourself. It's hard to teach yourself something that you don't know
Right. And
to
so there's
yourself.
and the nature of teaching yourself something you don't know is a lot of wasted time.
That's my point, is that if someone's a master and they can teach it to you, they're going to teach it to you a lot quicker than, if you really sit down and you get in the textbook and you take your questions and do your flashcards, like, yeah, you may eventually learn it to the
Mm,
point where even you're a master at that topic, but it's going to take a lot more time than if you're
correct.
with a partner and they could just teach it to you in probably one sitting.
And think about how grueling that is and how it starts to affect the other parts of the exam. So, I remember one of my first long-term students that I used to see one-on-one, and I would meet him every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 a.m. at Starbucks in Midtown in New York.
Oof.
This dude was just, or 6:30. I would be on the train at 6. He was just a very motivated guy, like super motivated. And the first thing I ever taught him was time value of money. And I remember him walking out and going, he's like, it literally would have taken me a year to figure out this time value of money stuff, what we did in 6 weeks.
Right,
Right. Like like he's like, I read this in the book literally 20,000 times.
right,
And he's like, I could watch but like now when you're actually putting it on a timeline, I'm seeing it. I have to do the calculations. I'm getting my hands dirty with the material. And now it feels like I'm actually getting to know it and I can remember it and now build upon it. And that's the thing is like you can't build upon something that you don't know. And that's where your partner steps in and goes, whoa, we're missing steps. And that's part of the one of the hardest parts of this test is that there's just so much information. And I started instituting this into our group program because initially our groups weren't set up to have so much partner interaction. There was still a lecture element to our group classes. And when we started implementing it, we saw students do not only do better, but retain more. But then we started seeing the improvements on the mocks and their testing, their practice questions, and then eventually onto the CFP.
Mhm.
But one of the most important parts of that is that it got you talking about the material, which you're not going to do on your own ever, period.
Yeah. I also always found it like a nice safety net. Like we and just so y'all know, like I got introduced to like the group study concept. I mean, listen, obviously you go through college and high school, you have people that you sometimes study with, but like the group setting was totally a product of me joining, Joe and his program. And I always found it very comforting going through this is just another positive that I want to talk about. I always found it very comforting going through the process with another person or two other people or whatever it was, because you're kind of going through the same, very difficult process of studying for the CFP, all the stress and blah, blah, blah. So it was always nice to be able to like lean on a partner. And it was also always nice to lean on them knowing that what we talked about earlier. Like, I don't really know this, but I think Joe may know this. And when we meet on Saturdays, we'll go over that. And it didn't stress me out enough not knowing topics because I knew I
Right.
had a really strong system that was going to eventually help me learn what I needed to learn. And that was always a big thing. And just being able to collab with other people and go through all this stuff, talk about how much you hate the process, talk a lot of smack about Joe and
As you should.
but it was
That
just
bald bastard.
it's just very comforting having that like
Yeah.
safety net and
Yeah.
that person that is going to be there to kind of help you through like tough times and then also, be there at good times too.
Yeah. And I think you're always going to kind of role reversal on that because you're going to go to there are going to be days that you don't want to be there. You're frustrated, you're discouraged, you're not getting something. Your partner is trying to help you. And again, we ideally you want your group meetings to be an extension of what you do in class. Continue to bring back the things that you don't understand to your office hours, to your classroom. That way class and your meetings outside work together cohesively. That's ideally what we want. But I'll tell you the other thing that I think, everybody underestimates is the consistency that a partner provides. I don't feel like studying tonight. I got a lot on my plate. I got a lot going on. And a good partner will go, yeah, man, I feel you. That's that stinks. Okay, see you tomorrow. But a great partner will be like, great, everybody's got shit going on. Get your ass into the Zoom meeting or get your ass here. Like,
Yeah,
we
you're
get it.
held accountable for multiple standpoints, not just them doing, not just what you said, but also there were a lot of times where I was like, well, I don't want to let them down. And
Yeah.
like, I don't want to miss another session that we scheduled for Saturday morning, or I don't want to be like the one that's always relying on them to teach me stuff. So it's very motivating in that sense, and you're held accountable to a pretty high standard. A lot of times when you're with a peer group, like you want to hold your weight, unless you're a complete asshole. And you want to bring something to the table with a group of people,
Sure.
and that makes you be on your game more than if you were by yourself. It's all so many positives
Yeah,
to
there's so many positives. I'll leave everybody with this. I have this distinct memory of I'm studying for level two. I had just moved to LA. It's COVID. I don't really know anybody. I'm running the business. And I remember I'm leaving the office one day, and it was just a day that I had 7 or 8 sessions. I had like an 8, 9, 10, 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. It was a lot of sessions in one day where like my only break was lunch. And that was pretty common for that time just because everybody was at home during COVID and they had more flexibility. But there was this one particular day I just remember getting really beat up like by students. Like it was just a rough day. Like nobody was understanding, nobody was on time, nobody did homework, everything was pushed back. It was just a day where like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And the only thing I wanted to do was go home, have something to eat, sit on the couch, watch TV, go to bed, and pick it up the next day. And I remember Nick was just not having it. He was like, good. He's like, he had something going on with his business. He's like, cool. Your thing is cool. So I have a thing too. And I was just like, damn, like, all right, fine. And then I remember we got on the Zoom and for the first 30 minutes, we didn't get jack shit done. We were just both yelling and screaming our heads off about like how shitty our day had went. And this dude was in the middle of like, he was having issue with his business, like somebody was trying to like shut him down, or it was something that ended up working itself out, but it was very stressful in the moment. And
Yeah.
to have that and level two, and he's like not letting off I'm like, you know what? If he can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And I remember that that was like it was a good momentum plug, like it kept the momentum going. And then like I remember being in that weekend, I'm going thinking to myself, like, I'm really happy that I didn't take that day off because I might have ended up taking another day off and feeling sorry for myself. I'm feeling beat up. I'm tired. I need a break. All the things that go into your brain while you're going through this process, your study partner goes, great. That's
Go.
why we're here. That's why you get the letters and somebody else doesn't, because
Right.
you had the discipline to do this.
Hmm.
Right? And this is an exam more so of discipline than of intelligence. And that's the key here. So we'll leave you guys with that. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, reach out to David or myself. Please make sure that you like this video and subscribe to our channel, and we will see you guys on our next episode.